Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Richard, and today I wanted to show you a couple things I'm going to be doing to my Gallardo Superleggera. The front differential is leaking just a little bit, so I need to jack the car up and take out a lot of components to get to that. And this is going to necessitate the removal of the whole entire front differential, so that should be pretty fun. And unfortunately, I'm going to show you a really good example of why you should always use a torque wrench. It kind of stinks. And then I also have some coolant lines that need to be replaced and a high lift system hose that needs to be replaced as well. So it should be a pretty fun video, and it's kind of like 6 birds with 1 stone, if you will. And let's get this car jacked up, and then we can take a look underneath and start pulling parts off. It should be pretty fun. So I have the QuickJack systems. I think they're called the, I think the model number is the TLX 5000, and they fit excellent under my Gallardo. Really a game changer in terms of having space to work underneath the car. And then I went ahead and removed the center panels. These are carbon on the Superleggera, which is pretty nice. It's something that you don't really see. Tons of dirt though. I don't think these ever been removed. So I went ahead and cleaned these up, and you can really tell the difference is just, you know, amazing how much these shine up. And it's kind of a shame that like you don't really ever see it underneath the car. Same with this gigantic front carbon piece. Now that we have the front under tray off and that center under tray, we can get a good look at what is under here and the problem that I'm having. So drive shaft looks good, bearing looks good, pretty rigid. It's just pretty dirty. These are the coolant lines. There's some grease on them. Moving up towards the top, you can kind of see a little dripping out of this area. So this is like the rear of the differential carrier. So this is going to be coming out, and then you can see the differential up here. You can see a little bit of residue on that little rubber retainer that's holding the differential in. That's leaking. And then what's interesting about this differential is that it's specific to the Superleggera. So this is magnesium, and the original Gallardo is just an aluminum casing. So it's a specific Gallardo Superleggera differential housing, which is pretty cool. So here's where the fun really begins. So I was actually already in here before, actually about a year ago now, and I was gonna do a video on how to change out the differential fluid. And there's a rule to changing differential fluid and fluid of any kind, and it's to change out and remove the fill port before you remove the drain port. And this is a perfect example of why you need to do that. So you would assume that this is completely tight, but all I can do is just keep turning it and turning it and turning it, and it'll never get tight. It'll just keep turning and turning and turning. So at that point, I realized that the threads are completely stripped in here, and there was no way I was going to be able to get it out and repair that without taking the whole differential out. So I've already been in here once before, and I was like, screw this, and I just put it all back together. So that's really why I'm taking it out. And that's why you need to use a torque wrench. And that's why you also need to take out the fill port before you take out the drain port. Because if I took out the drain and drained all the fluid, I wouldn't be able to fill it back up because I can't even get this out. It's so bad. But yeah, let's take this out and lower it down, and we can really get a good look at it and repair the threads, and then also repair that seal. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take apart the drive shaft, running to the front. And I have a special tool for this. It's a 12-point triple square, and you know, you see this a lot on Audi parts. So pretty much every car, you know, every fastener in this car is either 12-point triple square or like a hex. So I'm going to leave the link in the description for this hardware set that I have, and it's really invaluable. So what I'll probably do is undo one fastener when my wife is in the car, and then she's holding the brake, and then I'm going to turn it. Well, I can only do it with one hand. And then undo the other fastener and just go around in unison. And then same with the drive shaft back there. I'm gonna do the same thing, just one bolt at a time, and then I'll have this out in no time. And then I'll also be sure to take that center support carrier out as well. It's just held on with 2 fasteners. So let's get this bad boy out. Come on, there we go. Okay, got that. I gotta get this side. Okay. Got the drive shaft out. That's cool. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is take off the wheel, and that will allow me to get those bolts that are for the axle shafts, a lot easier. And then looking past the wheel, we can actually see what we need to take out. And it's those fasteners right up in here. And again, they're 12-point triple star, and they go right into the differential, and then they feed power to this axle for the wheel. So same thing, gonna take it out by having my wife in the car and hitting the brake while I undo one of them and then turning the wheel, and we should be able to get this differential out after that. Same for the other side too. So we're just gonna do the same thing where I tell you to hit the brake and then I'll just, yeah, okay? Okay. So just hold on for a second. Foot on the brake. All right, so we got those axles out. You can see right here, I got it loose. And then on the other side, it's also loose. You can't really see it because of the frame rail. So now I'm gonna work on undoing the main bolts for the mount for the differential. So you have one here, and then you have one here in the front. And then in the rear, we have this main differential carrier. So I'm gonna undo these two bolts. And the whole thing should come down. So I'm probably gonna put a jack and a piece of wood right here, and then lower it down slowly. And this thing will come right out. Getting this diff out was surprisingly tricky, so I kind of skipped that step and just showed you the final result. This thing is surprisingly light, so we can get it on the bench and get a good look at it. Don't know what that was. So here I am trying to get this fill port out, and rotating it isn't going to do anything. So I'm basically getting a screwdriver and prying them between the fill port and the crush washer. I don't want to put it in between the crush washer and the magnesium housing, because, well, then you mess up the magnesium housing. So just being gentle and trying to get it out, but it's proving difficult. Okay, there it goes. Oh man. So you can kind of see the threads are just totally knackered on here. It is completely salvageable though, so that's really good news, so don't worry. I'm also, this fluid looks beautiful. Must have been replaced, well, quote, recently. So yeah, if you put your finger in here and you feel around, it's just strip threads all the way through. You can see how small those threads are, so it's just, there's not a lot of engagement on this magnesium housing, and it just pulls it right out, especially if you don't use a torque wrench. It's just really bad news. It's a no-go. So I have this special threaded insert kit that I bought. It's called a TIME SERT. I used it on the engine as well because I had a strip thread on there. That was interesting. And this is basically what the replacement is. It's just I guess it's more of a steel insert. So what you do is you use a special drill to drill the new size. And after that, you counter bore it with a special counter boring tool. And then you tap it, right? And then use a special TIME SERT insertion tool. It has a very special pattern on it that kind of wedges this threaded insert into the differential casing, and with a little bit of thread locker, it's never going to go anywhere. And then this little outside lip sits flush, so that way you still have a good sealing mechanism for the copper crush washer. So it's a very expensive kit, but it's also a very expensive differential, and it's definitely worth the money. So this differential is just really interesting in general. I've been wanting to talk about it for a while. It's a very unique design. And so what's fascinating is that the center differential isn't housed in the transmission case. It's actually housed in this front differential. So you have this portion right here, which has a very special center differential, and then it biases power to the front wheels through the front differential. And what's really fascinating about this is that what's coming out of the transmission is just a shaft at a continuous rotational velocity. And you also have, when the car is moving, you have, and you're not under any sort of slip condition, you have a velocity match between what the front wheels see and what the back wheels see. So under ideal conditions, the center differential isn't really doing anything. And what the center differential does is it's a fluidic coupling that relies on shear and heat to bias the power between the front and the rear wheels. So what's very fascinating about this is that, let's say for instance, you'll have not so much traction in the rear and you have a lot of traction in the front. What this center differential is going to see is a difference between what the front wheels are rotating at and what the rear wheels are rotating at, since this is rotating at a certain constant velocity. So if you get slip in the rear wheels, that means you're going to have a higher velocity at this shaft and a lower velocity at this part of the differential. And what happens is that the center differential heats up, and by heating up, a very special sealed fluid inside of here, the shear of that fluid increases, or the shear force required, and what it does is it biases power to the front if you have a slipping in the rear. And it's a really interesting, unique design. It's shared with the Audi R8, and it's, you know, basically the same thing, but it's a sealed unit with sealed fluid inside of the differential, and it's, you know, just a lifetime fill. And that's why you never want to have your car towed with two wheels off the ground, because you're going to absolutely destroy the center differential, and that's really no fun. And it looks like my drain method is either going to be a stroke of genius or stupidity, but I'll let you be the judge of that one. Yeah, this fluid must have been changed at some point. It looks brand new, almost. Really couldn't be happier. So this is what the drain port looks like coming out of the car. You'll get some material up here, some very fine particulates. This is a magnetic drain port, but no big metal chunks. The fluid looked great. And then it looks like somebody tried to use a little bit of RTV to seal this up. I don't know what they were thinking, but I got a new O-ring and a new crush washer and a new fastener. So we should really be in tip-top shape with this one. I'm pretty excited to put it back in. So the gasket I need to get at is behind this input shaft spline. So there's really no way to get at it without removing this. So there is a nut in here that is kind of special, and it's going to take a little bit of work to take off. But once we take this off, this piece should really come right off. And if you take a good look in here, you can see that there is the nut that we need to take off, but on one side of the nut, there is a locking mechanism. And what they do is they basically take a punch like the one I have, and they punch a tab into the shaft of the differential itself. So that way the nut doesn't back off and this doesn't fall off. So I've already started working on this, and what you really need to do is you need to get like a cold chisel or a cold punch like this, and then insert it into any sort of spot that you can find. I've already started working on this, and then start hitting with a hammer, and then that will allow this like metal to deform. And then we're going to come back with an impact gun and take this nut off. So I'm going to hit this with a hammer, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's done. Okay, so now this little tab is bent mostly out of the way. I'm not too concerned with it. So next thing we're going to do is hit it with an impact and get this nut off. All right, so it's the 32 mil. See if we can get this off with one hit. There we go. Right on. Look at that. It's beautiful. Excellent. You can see inside of here this seal that we need to replace. So it's obviously leaking, and that's the source of it leaking. So it's going to be pretty tough to get it out because it's encased in this aluminum housing, or magnesium housing if you were. It's going to be pretty interesting to take out, and then you're also going to be really interesting to put it back in. Should be fun. And another thing to note is, since we bent that little tab back, there's no damage on these threads at all. So it's really important considering the the nature of this differential. So you can never really be too safe. And it's really a good idea to have like a $3 tool to fix a $10,000 differential. So I'm happy I was able to get that nut off pretty well, pretty successful with that. It's good. So to take this out, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill some holes. I'm gonna drill a hole here, here, down here, and then up top. And this is a piece of metal, so it's kind of like a metal L shape. And it's a piece of metal on the top, and then it kind of bends into the side where it mounts on the outer radius. And so what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill through that metal, be very careful of course, and then put a hook mechanism like this, and then hook it through so I can then pull out the seal slowly on every side. I'm sorry I didn't show you this on camera, but I got that gasket out, and what I basically did is drilling it kind of worked, but not really. So it looked like there was like some sort of adhesive or some sort of sticky stuff on the inside of this the sealing face right here. And so what I did is I went around with a screwdriver and I hit this top face, and that allowed this face right here to kind of warp away from the metal and release it enough to where when I was able to get this little prying mechanism into these holes, it was able to pop out. So I got that out of the way. So let's put that to the side. And then inside of here, there's another, there's the mechanism where the bearing actually rides on. You can see that. And then we put that to the side. And then inside of here, there is that roller bearing that runs all the way through. And then on the shaft, there's another O-ring. So let me pull that O-ring off. And I got replacement O-rings, so that's pretty cool. It's just a standard Audi part. The gasket that I just destroyed is not, though. But we'll worry about that in a little bit. So let me get that O-ring out with my hand. Okay, just like that. So it's a two-piece sealing mechanism, so best to replace both of these at the same time. And next thing I'm gonna do is get in here with a rag, a nice clean rag, and clean up all this junk, and also clean up this sealing surface where the gasket rides on. So let me do that, and we can take a good look at what it looks like afterwards. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to replace that O-ring, and I went ahead and put some differential fluid on it, and we can install it onto that shaft all the way to the back. And then we're going to get that interface mechanism. That's where the O-ring sits in this groove, and then the seal rides on the top right here. And we can just install it back onto that input shaft. It slides right on just like that. So the next thing I'm going to do is install the new gasket, the new oil ring in this area. And I'm going to do this by using this little 3D printed thing that I just made. And it kind of sits nice and flush like that, so I can distribute the load and then hit it with gently with a like a rubber mallet, and it will go in nice and smooth and easy. So the first thing I did was I lubricated the outside face and the inside face, and then I can go in and just push it in by hand kind of gently. And that piece that we just put in previously prior to this has a little bit of a lip to it, to where when I install this oil ring, it will kind of guide itself into the proper orientation. So I'm not too concerned about the lip riding back or anything like that, but it's just a little bit tricky, and you have to be very careful and just go slow. Take your time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to center it over that gasket, and I'm going to come back with a rubber mallet and then gently hammer it in. Now that new gasket is in there, it looks pretty good. We can come in and put this spline back on, and it should just interface directly onto it. Okay, so that's back on, it looks pretty good. Okay, so putting the nut back on is a little bit tricky, and I've decided to use the same nut. I'm not too concerned about it. I'm just gonna hit in the same spot where it locks onto the shaft, and I'm gonna torque it down, of course. But this is where the fluidic coupling kind of interferes with our ability to work on this differential. So my friend Vincent helped me out, and thank you, Vincent, for this idea. But basically all I did was get a piece of steel plate and then put some holes in it, and then when you torque it down, the outer shaft of this this spline, if you will, is connected to the inner splines of the differential. So we'll be able to torque it down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on it, and this, I noticed that there was Loctite when I took it off, so I figured why not put it back on it the same way, and we should be good to go. So I'm gonna get a torque wrench out, and I'm going to torque this down to 170 Newton meters, or 125 foot-pounds. Okay, so my torque wrench is set to 125 foot-pounds. I'm gonna put my foot on top of the differential so it doesn't move around. Got it. So now the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back in here with a punch and punch this metal down into this little recess on the shaft. And the final touch is to repair this thread. You can see the new threaded insert in there. And then I get a new plug and a new crush washer, and it is good to go. And last but not least, I went ahead and cleaned it up, and it looks excellent compared to how it was, just, 20 years of dirt and grime. So the differential is back in, and I just wanted to show you how I cleaned the whole underside of this car. It was really quite messy, but now it looks like it almost came out of the showroom. I'm really proud of it, and just excellent. I haven't torqued down the drive shaft yet, so you might notice I have a fastener, a 12-point triple square in there, but just beautiful, excellent. These are all nice and clean too, so just lovely. It's that attention to detail that really matters. So if you like this video, please consider giving it a like, and then until next time, thanks.